Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you enjoyed the Macros 101 Part 1. In that video, I discussed the basics of what are macros. In this video, I was thinking about the format of the video, and yes, I will be talking about how to track macros, but what if you don't know your macros? Well, today I will first discuss how to find your macros, and then from there we will go into how to track your macros. So, first things first, how to find your macros. There are so many resources on the internet, and that's great. You can certainly use those resources. There's lots of calculators that find it easy. I kind of just wanted to give you an overview of how those calculations work and then give you the most basic calculations that you can do yourself, like on your phone right now as you are watching this video. But again, there's some great resources online as well that take into account your age, your height, your weight, your activity level, and what you do for work. Whether you are sedentary, meaning are you just sitting all day at a desk, or are you active? Are you on your feet a lot? Are you, a construction worker? Are you a waitress? Are you a teacher? So jumping into what is needed for you to find your macros. The first thing that you need to take into consideration are, what are your goals? Are you trying to lose body fat? Are you trying to get leaner? Are you trying to maintain your maintenance levels? Are you trying to gain muscle, meaning you have to be in a surplus? I just want to note that you will gain some body fat, but obviously through tracking macros and really understanding what you're putting into your body and eating whole foods and not eating out a lot, not eating a lot of junk food or foods and high fats can definitely help you reach those goals. That's why I think tracking your macros is so important. So one thing I want to clear up. If your goal is to lose body fat, you have to be in a caloric deficit, meaning you have to be eating below your maintenance levels. You have to basically eat less than what you are consuming for your maintenance. That's just how it works. There's no easy quick fix. There are no amount of diet pills or detoxes or anything that's on the market that can help you reach your goal. And I think this is why a lot of people struggle with trying to lose weight or lose body fat. I put lose weight in quotation marks because losing weight isn't necessarily what the goal should be. The goal should be losing your body fat, because you don't want to lose the muscle that you have put on or you've worked for. Yes, you will be losing weight, but the end goal is to reduce your body fat. And if your goal is to gain muscle or lean mass, then you need to be in a caloric surplus. So you have to be eating above your maintenance calories. And again, this is hard. Some people would love to be in a caloric surplus, but again, you have to be eating the right foods. Yes, you can eat out here and there, but again, if you are constantly eating out, eating foods with a lot of high fat, because a lot of restaurants use fat when they're cooking, and you don't really know what they're putting in their food. You can't really track that. So again, if you're like eating out a lot, then you will most likely gain some unnecessary body fat, and that's kind of where there's like a hard line of knowing what you're eating in order to meet your goals to gain muscle. Once you know what your goals are, even if it is to lose fat or to gain some lean mass, then you should have a basic understanding of your baseline and what your current eating habits are. I found with some of my clients, or even just like my family and friends, that they are under eating. That's why sometimes it's hard to actually lose body fat, because you're already eating so low. That's why I recommend first tracking your macros with your maintenance calories, and then after a few weeks of understanding how to track your macros, then you can start reducing or adding food based on your goals. And while tracking your macros can seem very daunting, as I mentioned in my previous video, if you are an athlete and whether it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, even just a sports athlete, and you're trying to get to a certain level, then yes, you definitely should track your macros. There's just so much more educational components you get out of it. But for someone who is just doing it for their lifestyle, I would strongly recommend tracking your macros, so then you can get to a point where you don't have to track your macros, and that's where intuitive eating comes in. I think, a lot of times the subject on food and dieting can be a touchy subject, because I think a lot of times people have bad relationships with food, and I speak for myself as well, because there are times where if you're eating and indulging, and then all of a sudden you feel like you need to go on the treadmill or go run for like an hour to work off the calories that you were consuming, and that can become a bad cycle. So intuitive eating just basically means that you have gotten to a point where you are satisfied with what you've eaten, you know what to eat because you know your portions, and you know to limit yourself. And yes, you can eat that dessert, but then you're not going to overindulge. And it's really a process of knowing yourself and trusting yourself. And obviously, when I am not competing in my off season, this is where I practice that. I started working with my coaches in 2018, and that's really where I learned how to track my macros. And then I took off between 2019 and 2020. I wasn't planning to compete. Obviously wasn't working with my coaches, but I still held myself accountable. There were plenty of times where I wasn't tracking my macros, and I was, going out to eat, but really trying to be more intuitive about what I'm eating, what I'm putting inside my body. And then there would be a period of like 4 to 8 weeks, a few times, that I would track my macros just to make sure that, I'm kind of cleaning up a little bit, any excess fat. Eating is a social event. So I definitely know that, whether it was drinking over the holidays, those are all still calories, granted empty calories, but calories nonetheless. Okay, so finding your macros. So the first step in finding your macros is understanding what your total daily energy expenditure is. And these are the total amount of calories that you are spending or burning in an average day. And this is the sum of 3 things. The first thing is your resting metabolic rate. And so this is the amount of energy spent to sustain vital bodily function. So this includes, blood circulation, respiration, and body temperature regulation. And this accounts for about 70% of our energy, because obviously we need those functions to sustain our life, right? So we're not controlling that. It's just happening kind of like in the background, I guess. But this is happening all day, every day, including when we're sleeping. So that accounts for a lot of the amount of energy that we need. And that's why we obviously need to eat so many times during the day. The second number comes from thermic effect of food. This is the energy that is expended during digestion, for storage, and for use. And this accounts for about 6 to 10%. We're not eating all day, every day, so this number isn't going to be that high. The third number comes from the energy that is expended during physical activity, and this can be as high as 20%. So all of those numbers account for the total daily energy expenditure, and this will basically be our maintenance calories. So what are the calories that we need to consume to sustain our daily life, taking into account what we do on a daily basis, including, the things that we can't control, so our bodily functions, including our digestion, and then the physical activity that we do. Similar to what I had mentioned in the previous video, are you walking a lot? Are you on your feet a lot? I live in New York City, so taking the train or taking the bus, walking around a lot in the city, versus someone who, drives everywhere. And if you are parking really close to a store, you're not really walking a lot, versus someone who parks far. How many steps are you getting in a day as well? So now I'm going to give you 2 basic formulas for how to find your total daily energy expenditure or your maintenance calories. These are very basic formulas. There is a margin for underestimating and overestimating. You can compare this against calculators. At the end of the day, I think it's important to kind of really play around with what works for you. So for the first formula, there are 2 steps. The first step is to find your resting metabolic rate, and that is just your weight times 10. And then that's the number. So the example I'm providing, I'm using my weight before I started bikini prep. In step 2, you take your resting metabolic rate that you found in step 1, and then you times that by an activity factor. And again, this is dependent on how active you are in the day. And I wouldn't lie just so that you can have higher calories. I just want to call that out. The most basic formula you can use for finding your maintenance calories is to multiply your body weight between 14 and 16. And this is just backed by data that has said that you should have between 14 to 16 calories per pound of body weight. So I'm comparing the math between both formulas, and they are very accurate with each other. So you can really see how these are basically the same. It's just easier to use the second formula that I had shared. But again, definitely, try these against the online calculators as well, and then just really see what works for you. What is up, you guys? This is editing Alyssa here, interrupting because although I talked for so long, I completely missed one thing in how to find your macros, and it was actually how to find your macros. I talked about how to find your maintenance calories, and from there I will be going into how to find your macros. So the first thing you need to know is you need to find your protein and your fats, because those have very specific numbers you need to hit in order to sustain your bodily function. Carbs, it doesn't matter, it can vary. Obviously, this is kind of where keto is derived from. The recommended value for fat is 20 to 35% of your total calories, and this will be highly dependent on what your goal is. If your goal is to lose body fat, then it's recommended to go on the lower end. Whereas if you are bulking or in a caloric surplus and you're really looking on to, add some size, you can be in the middle to the higher end of the spectrum. I will be giving an example based on the maintenance calories that I found, and I will be using the 1,710 calories. From there, you will find your protein. So if you are looking to really put on size, if you're really into weightlifting and you want to maintain your muscle or add muscle, the recommended value is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. However, it can vary. The recommendation varies from 0.8 grams to 1.2 grams. Again, this will be up to you and how you want to balance your macros. So for someone who is new to tracking your macros and you're not really sure what your goal is, you can definitely go on the lower end. I definitely found that when I first started, it was hard to hit over 110 to 120 grams of protein. So for this example, I will be doing 1 gram per body weight. That is the simplest decision. However, you could play with the numbers. I currently eat 140 grams of protein, so that's about 1.2-ish grams per pound for my body weight. And then lastly, carbs are just the remainder of those calories. You take your total calories, you subtract it by the fat and protein combined, and then that'll give you the remaining calories. And so then you would divide that number by 4 to get your actual carbs. It may sound confusing, but I'm obviously going to provide an example so that you can visually see it. And that's it, folks. That's how you find your macros. So again, I am telling you how to find your macros if you want to do it yourself, but there are lots of online resources and calculators that do it for you. But I think it's great to have the knowledge to learn how to do it yourself so that you can really play with it. Now back to the original programming. So the last thing I want to hit on before we jump into tracking macros is if one of your goals is to be in a caloric deficit or to lose body fat, the standard has been to reduce your overall calories by 500. And this is because it's believed that 1 pound of fat is equal to 3,500 calories. So if you're reducing your calories every day for 7 days a week by 500, that theoretically is 3,500 calories, which means the healthy standard is to lose 1 pound a week. And I know there's so many fad diets out there that say, oh, lose 10 pounds in a week or lose, 30 pounds in a month. And that's really not healthy. I hope this kind of just provides you a little bit more insight into, how to meet your goals sustainably. And then on the flip side, for caloric surplus, it's the same thing, increasing your calories by 500. Stay hydrated. Alright, so now we are in the kitchen. In order to track your macros, you need 2 things. 1, a digital scale, and 2, a tracking software like MyFitnessPal, which is what I use. I know there are a few other ones, but those you have to pay for, and MyFitnessPal is free. They do have a premium option, but I just use the free option. So for the digital scale, I have 3 that I kind of just wanted to kind of give you an overview about. This one was my first one. I bought it at Bed Bath & Beyond, and it's very simple. It has an on button. There are 2 modes. The first mode has grams and the second mode has ounces and pounds. And I kind of upgraded, well, I guess it's not really upgraded, but I bought a second one. This one was actually recommended to me by a friend who is studying to be a registered dietitian. So the first thing you'll notice is it has all these codes in it that is kind of already programmed to save and have those macros in it already. However, I don't really use it because at the end of the day I track in MyFitnessPal. But for someone who is interested in knowing what these are like, they're great. But what I really like about it is it has 4 settings. It has grams, it has ounces and pounds, it has milliliters, and then it also has fluid ounces. So for me, that is really helpful. And the last one is actually a travel sized food scale that was actually recommended to me by a fellow teammate. It's really small, it's really cute. This one actually has a few scale units, and I've used it whenever I was traveling, and it's really helpful and pretty accurate. You can get a very basic one at a store like Bed Bath & Beyond or off Amazon or whatever, and they're pretty cheap, about $20 or so. Obviously there are more like higher tech ones, but obviously get the one that fits within your budget, and if you're just starting out, you don't need anything fancy. So I kind of wanted to start off to explain why tracking your macros is really important and why it's more accurate rather than just following what's on the back of a bag of chips, or in this case some oatmeal. For example, this oatmeal says that this serving size is half a cup dry. I'm not sure if you could see it, but which is equivalent to 40 grams. So if half a cup of dry is equivalent to 40 grams, I want to show you how incorrect that is. Just half a cup. I'm not even going to put this on the food scale yet. I'm just going to pour out half a cup and show you. Okay, so this is half a cup. So now I'm going to place my bowl on the scale. It is at 0. At 0, I put it on grams. I'm pouring half the cup in, and it says 43 grams. That is 3 more grams than the serving size. So again, a lot of measuring cups are just estimate. Obviously that's, I guess, okay for baking, but if you're tracking your macros and really need to hit a certain amount of calories, this is an extra 3 calories. So let's just say those extra 3 calories are from carbs. If you remember from the first video, 1 gram of carb is equivalent to 4 calories. So that's an extra 12 calories that you're getting if you are just using half a cup and not the serving size. So you could put any bowl, Tupperware, whatever you use on the food scale. You press tare just to make sure that it's at 0. You pour until 40 grams. And then that's it. So then if I'm having oatmeal, I will, once I take it out of the microwave, because I don't have time to cook it on the stove, I would set the bowl back onto the food scale. I would press tare so that everything inside of it is to 0. And then depending on the toppings, if I'm doing 1 by 1, so if I'm adding like strawberries, I would put the amount of strawberries I want. Again, if I'm putting more toppings, I press tare again, and then I'm gonna put peanut butter or chocolate chips, whatever I'm putting in, or trying to add something new, you're gonna press tare so that it zeroes it out. So what if you're doing liquids? Great question. So generally what I like to do, again, if I am just putting like egg whites in a pan, I put the actual pan on the food scale, put tare again, and then I pour the egg whites inside of it. Something I've seen that people will do if they're making like an omelet and they have stuff already in the pan, like vegetable sauteing, what they'll do is they will put the actual liquid on here press tear, and then pour the liquid into it. Place this back, and it'll tell you how much you've removed from it. I will show both approaches. If I'm doing the pan's on here, I press tear, it's at 0. I'm gonna pour this inside. So I've put 100 grams in here. I'm ultimately gonna put 200 grams, so I'm gonna split it up just to show you. So pan aside, I place the egg white container in here, I press tear. So it's at 0. I'm pouring some of it in the pan. Again, I want it to be minus 100 because at the end I want this to be 200 grams of egg whites. So it's not perfect, I'm a little over. So I've showed you how to track on a food scale. Again, it will take a little bit of time. Actually measuring out your food isn't the problem, it's gonna be tracking. So for simplicity of the video, I'm gonna continue with the oatmeal example. So let's say I wanna have some oatmeal with some peanut butter and some fruit. I'm gonna go into the MyFitnessPal app. So let's say it's your first time, you'll have to obviously create an account. There are cool things. You can already input your own macros. So let's say you find your macros, you would go to the calories and macro go section. You would input your calories, and then it will kind of give you a recommendation on what the macro should be, but then you can kind of adjust them. They're not going to be perfect. You can get them more perfect if you obviously get a premium account, but again, it's very simple if you still use the free one. So if you go to diary, it will definitely not have anything in your saved log from your previous tracking, but you can do this thing where you go to the barcode, you scan it, and then it already auto-populates a lot of that information. For the serving size, you can keep it to where it's at, or you can go to the drop-down menu and select the one that would be more appropriate that you want to use. So for me, it would be grams. Save it. And then again, if I want to add some peanut butter, I just scan it. Again, it's gonna give you the serving size that's already on the back of the label, but I'm going to select 16 grams, save it, and then let's say I want a banana. I'm gonna do USDA banana, and then let's say I decide to do 85, which is about 3 ounces. So let's say that's what my breakfast is, and it kind of already tells me what my calories are. And if you go to this pie button at the upper right corner, it kind of already tells you what you had in that meal. So it'll say protein, carbs, fiber, sugars, fats, etc. You can go down and scroll further, and then it'll tell you your not all your micronutrients or your vitamins and minerals, but it'll give you like the most important ones. The more you use the app, the more you will populate more information. It's very convenient to help you track. Let's say you're going to McDonald's and you decide to have like some fries. They already have some of that information already populated in there. The one thing I will say is there's a slight margin of error in the formula, just because I've noticed that the macros that it tells me I've hit compared to the formula that my coaches use, which is the most basic formula. It is the protein plus carbs plus fat. So it'll be the number of protein for the day times 4 plus the number of carbs for the day times 4 plus the number of fat times 9, and you add that all together. So there is a slight margin of error in the app. You could decide to track it on the side on your own, like in a spreadsheet or something. But yeah, hope this was helpful. Something I really wanted to mention is if you are tracking your macros to the T, you are, hitting your protein, your carbs, your fat consistently and perfectly, and you are not seeing the 1 pound drop a week or you may just be plateauing or stagnant for a while. There's so many other factors that you need to take into consideration. You need to consider sleep. Are you sleeping enough? Do you have crazy hours that fluctuate every day or every week? Hormones, this plays such an important role. There are so many things that fluctuate within ourselves, our bodies. Is it that time of the month? Are your cortisol levels high? Are you stressed at work? Obviously 2020 has been stressful, the pandemic, quarantining, all those different things. There's just so many different factors that you have to take into consideration, and sometimes you can't control those things. So if you're not seeing the scale go down, then don't freak out about it. Just be patient with yourself. There's just, again, so many more things that can be going on. Your sodium levels can be high. Water weight is such a big one. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Between my first video and this video, I really just wanted to touch on the basics to give you a better base level understanding of what macros are and how to track your macros. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this and to continue following my journey. So happy tracking. I'll see you next time.